everyone. Welcome to another episode of Living with Jesus. I am Brittany Shawley, and today I'm here with kironJ. Welcome.
Hello, Brittany. Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here. I've seen so many of your posts around, but we haven't officially connected, so I'm grateful to be joining with you today. I've always resonated with your messages that you put out there, and when I mentioned to Tom, my partner, that you'd be on here, he's like, oh, I thought of her and I couldn't remember her name. So you're meant to be here. I'm happy to have you.
Lovely. Thank you.
So perhaps we'll just start with the opening question and we'll just see how this conversation flows and where it goes. But
Sure.
the first question that I'm interested in is just talk to me about your relationship with Jesus. Like, who is he? Who is he to you? How do you see him?
Ah, what a beautiful question. Beautiful to talk about this presence that's so clear, safe, secure, soft, and it has total authority. That is what's so distinctive for me. This utter authority, which has nothing to do with the world. It's not authoritarian at all. It just is. And that is utterly captivating to me. I feel it very deeply. It's a constant presence and the greatest blessing. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful.
Yeah, I actually got goosebumps with you saying like the ultimate authority. You know, There really is so much safety in that, to know that there's an ultimate authority that is beyond this world, but in this world through us. So that's a really comforting way to perceive him. Okay, so thank you. I'm really curious as to, like, how did you come to accept this presence, this authority, this Jesus in your life? Do you have a little bit of like a before and like an after? Like, yeah, maybe share with me a little bit about that.
I do, as so many do have. So I was brought up a Catholic. So my first knowing of Jesus was as this figure on the cross, dripping in blood. And I couldn't relate to that at all. He was just part of the Catholic upbringing, which did mean something to me, but it was also kept at a distance. There was something not quite right about it. And in my late teens, I let Catholicism, religion, all of that, I let that go and went into the secular experience, being a youngster, being in the world. And then when I was 31, there were two big life events which propelled me into very deep inquiry. The first was leaving my husband and briefly leaving my 3-year-old son as well. So that was all terribly traumatic. And 6 months later, my mum died. And I got to think, what's all this about? What had seemed quite stable and quite normal suddenly was all thrown in the air. And I responded by really looking, reading, so much reading about what goes on in the mind and what life might be about. And I trained as a relationship counsellor and I trained as a spiritual healer at the same time. So this was a huge incoming of information and ideas and a huge opening to new ways. And in this ferment came a phrase from the Bible. I don't remember now how it came to me, but it appeared to me. And it was Jesus saying, Whatsoever I have done, you will do, and more so. And this totally stopped me in my tracks. In that moment, I knew there was a Jesus. I just knew, beyond any doubt. And I also knew that what he was saying was true. However, on the human level, I didn't understand at all. I was a single parent, struggling in lots of ways. Jesus beforehand had been this figure on the cross that I didn't really relate to. And suddenly there was this presence that was utterly real, utterly believable, saying something that I knew was true, and I didn't understand. So I said to this presence, okay, you show me. If you say it's true, I believe it's true. I don't understand how it's true. So you show me.
Yes.
And this was the turning point of my life. Everything from that moment has been showing me the answer to that question. Although at first I didn't understand quite what was going on. So soon after that, I felt inspired to buy A Course in Miracles. Never heard of it, saw it in a book club. Thought, oh yeah, I'll get that. Didn't relate it to Jesus. The old green book, the old big green book. And I opened it and it was gobbledygook. I thought, oh, what am I doing with this book? I don't understand a word. I just flicked through it and thought, oh, I've made a mistake here. No idea what that's about.
Gobbledygook, I love it.
And within a week, I'd passed it on. There was a situation where I needed to pass something on, and I thought, oh, I'll get rid of that book. Thought no more about it. Fairly soon after that, I came across A Course of Love. Didn't connect the two, but I didn't know A Course in Miracles was anything to do with Jesus that first time round. Course of Love, yes, I recognised that was Jesus, and I read it, and it made a big impact on me, although it's not for me now. Things have very much changed, but at the time it was perfect. And then I went into a long period of illness when I wasn't up and around in the world. So I carried a few phrases from A Course of Love with me and this presence, and they were very sustaining in a very challenging time. And then this was 6 years of not being around in the world. And nearly at the end of this time, which was very grim, Jesus appeared to me as a figure in my mind, sitting on the end of my bed. And he was so quiet, patient, untroubled by the dire circumstances, just waiting, very reassuring. And that carried me through the darkest hour of the before the dawn kind of situation. And then I started to recover from this illness, and it was a long period of recovery. But this presence was there, and I kind of knew it was Jesus, and I also didn't quite know it was Jesus. It was there. Very, very helpful. So in this long period away from the world, I had developed a very strong connection with spirit, if we say it like that generally. There was no connecting this way, but there was a lot of connecting that way. So I continued with that. And then after about 5 years, I went through a homeless phase and all sorts of bizarre things going on in my experience. And I went to a highly eclectic, really weird, far out, way out spiritual forum in a very mainstream pub, in a very mainstream little village in the south of England. You could not make it up. But I just turned up there thinking, oh, this will be interesting. And one of the speakers was a Course in Miracles teacher. And I thought, oh, I like what's going on with you. and I listened, I listened more attentively. And then he mentioned A Course in Miracles, and I thought, aha, that's that book I gave away all those years ago. Perhaps I'll have another look. And very soon after that, I was led to a place to live and a study group. And the first evening of the study group, 2 people offered me their spare copies of A Course in Miracles because I had no money. I wouldn't have been able to buy it at that time. And so I took the blue book that we know. I don't know what the other one was, but it was a slightly different version. And a few days later, I started the lessons, and I opened the book this time, and it was utter, utter, utter love from word one. I recognized the presence. It came through in such a deep way, having this time come to the course, and I haven't looked back. I have been totally riveted, enthralled, delighted, captivated, connected with this presence ever since.
So beautiful. So beautiful. And like, thank you for sharing that. And I feel a big part of like your story that I think is going to speak to a lot of people is that when we first open up the Course in Miracles, it is like a foreign language. Like, to me, I've always said it's the language of our soul, and so, it's foreign at first. And I can relate to that with so many people who've been through this journey of A Course in Miracles. And yet it looks like even though you were going through the dark time and the illness, you were being prepared for it mentally and spiritually.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Once I'd got into the course, I thought, aha,
there it is.
This exactly was the training ground. It gave me that connection, and it cleared not the whole ego by a long shot, but it cleared a lot of ego.
Yeah.
Because I just couldn't engage in the world.
Right.
And it was either sink or open to spirit.
Right.
And so I came to it ready, and I came to it running, if you like.
Yeah.
I read the book 4.5 times in the first 2 years, just continually. And I had the perfect practice. The house that I ended up in after the homeless period, I had a room with a landlady who was the representation of my attraction to sickness. The son was my anger, and the daughter was my false innocence. And I was there for 3.5 years, seemingly with no money to move anywhere else at the time. So I just practiced and practiced and practiced on that.
Yeah. Oh,
perfect.
So perfect. And this is so amazing. I love how you're sharing this, because it sounds exactly like we don't need to go anywhere else or do anything else other than be fully present with the life that we've been given, and we will learn the lessons that we need to learn. And it sounds like, yeah, when you moved into that house afterwards, that you saw the reflections of what you were working on and working through and healing and bringing forgiveness to outside yourself and these key players that allowed you to use them as the mirrors for your own healing and awakening. Like, that's how it's meant to be. That's exactly it.
Yeah. And it allowed, moving out of the house was all miraculous. I won't go into the story now, but it was all miraculous how it happened. And such a gift, because I could really, day in, day out, practice the forgiveness on this and own it, and absolutely own this is what's going on. And then I went to London, because in that time I was near Brighton, for those that means something for. In the South Coast. I was given this name, kironJ, and maybe I can mention that, how that came about. And I was also given the first Course in Miracles group to run by Jesus. So that was coming on board in that. And then I went to London and got far more involved in facilitating Course in Miracles work. But yeah, maybe I can tell you about a month retreat with Jesus, about a year and a half after I started studying. So still in this house, still in progress with all this work, and just reading and studying and loving it. It was absolutely my life. It's a dream. It's a dream. Oh my goodness, it's a dream. It's not there. Oh, I go around all the time. Wow. And then, I mean, I see Jesus. He's not active in the world. He is a transcended mind. He is a presence that we can tune into, is how I would see it. So when I say Jesus called me, I don't mean he literally knocked on the door. But no, I was opening, and I felt the inspiration to have a month-long retreat with Jesus, not organized, just me and Jesus. So 2 weeks were at my own room in this house, and 2 weeks were in 2 different people's houses when they were away, a week each. And it was just letting go of any other contact and being quiet, meditating, walking, being shown various spiritual books to read or meditations to listen to, but it was all Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And it was very challenging, quite scary, but absolutely what I wanted to do. And in one of the meditations, probably the deepest meditation I'd had to that date, to that time, I felt Jesus' presence, and I had not the physical voice, but the thought impression of, your name is now kironJ. And I saw it as I write it, which is not the normal way. It's with a little K and a capital J at the end. And these thoughts were, this is the right resonance for you now. And it is an acknowledgement of your commitment to following me. And so it's a little K representing the little self. And it's a capital J at the end. That's the little self opening up to the true self, letting go of the little self. J representing Jesus, representing the true self.
Goosebumps.
And that just came.
You're reminding me as you're communicating about one of my very favorite parts in the A Course in Miracles, and it is found in the beginning principles of miracles. And it sounds like you feeling called to devote this month to Jesus was almost putting these principles into practice. And I want to share them because it's so reflective in your story. But the first one is, well, he says, first of all, that when you can no longer tolerate lack of love in yourself or another, that we join the Great Crusade to correct it, right? And he says that the slogan of the Great Crusade is listen to my voice. And I loved what you called it. What did you call it? You're like, it's not necessarily an inner voice, but it's a thought imprint.
Thought impression.
Thought impression. That's beautiful. I love that language. But like, listen to my voice, listen to the thought impression, learn to undo error, which is the hard part, and then do something to correct it, right? Do as guided. And it sounds like that month-long dedication to him was you just devoting your whole heart, your whole mind, your whole self to listening to his voice. And you're right, it's not always an auditory voice, but it's tapping into that presence, that energy, his vibration, his feeling, his everything. And then you're also simultaneously undoing any of the blocks to him, to this love's presence, so that you can ultimately just teach and give and serve and bless and be his voice and be his hands and be his way in this world. And so I just feel like that's an amazing example and demonstration of what he asks us to do. And I'm also hearing in the Bible too, and he says, like, give everything you have away to the poor and come follow me. You know, and you're in that position of like, okay, I have nothing of the world, I have nothing, just take me as I am, right? And I mirror that in my own story. I had to do the same thing, give everything I have away, didn't have a home, went from house to house, place to place, but it was so I could trust his presence, trust his voice, have my faith be increased, and really develop such a deep trust in him that I can let him work through me and it not be scary, but instead just receive everything I'm giving back upon me. So there's so much that you're saying that's just resonating with my soul. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for these leaps of faith. It's so brave.
It's so lovely. Lovely doesn't come near it to be with you, and you have this deep connection with Jesus too. So beautiful. Yeah.
That's it. When he told me that I was going to do these interviews and interview people who have a relationship with Jesus, I'm like, yes, please. Yes, and I would love to. Just it fills me up.
Yeah. So what's coming to offer now is when I was still in Brighton, in the very early stages of running groups, first 50 lessons. In that month-long retreat, I got the idea, I was given the idea, support people through the first 50 lessons, like 9 face-to-face meetings covering those 50 days. And I absolutely loved that work. It was the perfect beginning and just fantastic. And this was really opening me and the juices were flowing. I thought, I would love to do more of this. And I was in a Quaker meeting. I was going to some Quaker meetings at the time. And something erupted from the core of me about desiring, not a physical desire, but like a spiritual desire to do this work. I was saying to Jesus, help me, help you, help me, help you, help me, help you, all the time. And I just collapsed into hysterical crying with this outpouring of desire to work as a Course in Miracles teacher. And it was beyond all thinking, beyond all rationality. It was just boom. And then after it calmed down a bit.
I understand.
All these people around me who would not have understood necessarily.
Right.
I thought, well, how's that going to happen then? How is that going to happen? But I knew the power of that outpouring. So I thought, okay, yes, I'm willing. And within a few months, I'd left Brighton. I'd moved to London. I'd already done one event for the Miracle Network, the UK organisation that represents Course in Miracles. And I was taken on as their events manager. And I worked there for 2 years and, of course, got to know so many people in the course community. Was doing more and more of my own, doing events for them, my own workshops and my own program. And then after 2 years, the guidance was, and now this is the time that you are a full-time Course in Miracles teacher.
Okay.
And here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Well, this is, I appreciate how that unfolded so organically for you. And you, in a sense that I think I really would like to highlight, is you waited for the guidance for your next moves. And this is what he says, like, ask me what to do. I'm going to put on the screen that people are going to look back. Help me, help you. Help me, help you. Yes. Like, I'm always like, speak to me and through me. Speak to me and through me. Like, Yeah. So I really resonate with that. And that aligns with the teacher's manual, right? Like that, the teacher's manual is part of the course because as we go through the workbook and we study the text, he's preparing us to be a teacher of God. He's preparing us for that. And he does say that all that it takes to is our willingness to listen to him and only him and allow him to guide us. So that's really beautiful. And I'll definitely have links below for people to the things that you offer in this because I know you hold such a holy, beautiful container. And I think that that's really amazing. But maybe this will actually lead us into the next question that I have for you. It sounds like obviously, yes, you use Jesus in your everyday life, but I would love to know a little bit more, maybe practically, maybe habitually, like what does it look like for you to live with Jesus? Like, do you have certain practices that you do? And what does it look like you to work with Jesus in your work, like as a teacher of A Course in Miracles? Yeah, maybe flesh that out a bit.
Thank you. From the very early days of studying the course, my central practice has been joining minds with Jesus. You know, I read very early on, the way to transcend the ego is to join minds with me. And I thought, that's a good deal.
That's a good deal.
That sounds simple.
Yes. Done.
I'll do that.
Yeah. Yes.
And I have done that. And I have done that, and I have done that. It's been completely central to everything. What does it look like? It's everything. It's absolutely everything. I wake up and join minds with Jesus. I just open to that presence. I sit down to work. I open to that presence. I wait for ideas to come about workshops, which is so gorgeous. I love it. I just get up. It's this theme now, and October will be a good time, or whatever. Oh, okay. So that goes in the diary, and then I get a prompt, and now's the time to receive this. So I sit down and take my pen, and I receive the workshop, or the course, or whatever it is. And sometimes it comes out, boom, just like that. Sometimes it comes out in parts, a little bit comes, and then that's enough for now. And then I go back and I do the workshop. I look at it, and I don't always understand it when it's coming through. I have a very experiential approach, because I come from a background of doing all sorts of things experientially with groups. And I love that. Even online, it's very experiential. So sometimes I will get an exercise, followed by contemplation, followed by this, followed by that. And I'm just taking all this down. And then I go back and have a look and see the wisdom of it, see the beauty of it. Oh, yes, of course. That's bringing up that, and then that's resolved there, and this opens it up there. And I get to see how Spirit is working through this vehicle. And I couldn't begin to describe the joy this brings. It is a perfect use of what I've made, this vehicle. It uses all kironJ's sensibilities, experience, to the max. And it just brings joy, because this is what I'm meant to do. And it's received very well. It nothing to do with a good career or anything like that. It's the work. It's Jesus flowing through, and it's received, and miracles happen. And this is blessing and blessing and blessing. We're Friday now as we're recording. Last weekend, I led a 3-day retreat called Joining Minds with Jesus. And it was utterly fabulous. The receiving of it, the working with it, because of course, me working with it, being with it, is healing my mind. Then we got news of Storm Eunice. I don't know whether you'd have heard about that over in the States, but the red alert weather warning was coming for the first day of this retreat. And 100-mile-an-hour winds, stay at home, don't go out, danger to life, all this was being broadcast. And this would have been the first day of the retreat. So I had to listen so carefully to make sure I was not misunderstanding the guidance, because it felt such a responsibility. All the worldly understanding would have been cancel the retreat. Don't put people in danger, don't do it. So I had a night with Jesus saying, I really, really do want to help you here.
Yeah.
If it's cancel, no problem. If it's to go, please let me hear this and how this can happen. And lots of storms of unknowing, the ego getting in there, trying to hijack the process, opening. And by the morning, it was absolutely clear how to proceed. And everybody but one who was going to be flying in from Europe got there.
Amazing.
And it was brilliant. work, and there's going to be another one in September. So perhaps that gives a flavour of how Jesus is here in my life, in my work. And I'm feeling more and more called to be more overt about the joining minds with Jesus. I mean, of course, it's there with A Course in Miracles, but just to bring it more up front.
Directly up front, yes.
Directly up front. That's the guidance, that's the sense. And I'm really happy about that.
Yeah. And that aligns with the guidance that I'm receiving too, that Jesus is now being brought up front in everything that I'm doing. He is being brought up front, brought up first. We made jokes about it that Jesus is going through his own rebranding in the world. Right? Like, yeah, I can see that. I'll be part of that.
Yeah.
There was a few things that I wanted to point out in what you shared that I think are really practical and useful and I think helpful for our listeners today. But the number one thing that you said was like, as soon as you wake up, or if you're, getting ready to give something of his to the world, that you open to him. Like, you just open your heart, open your mind to him. And that is the joining, because we are already joined in the mind with Christ. We just have to, instead of like closing down in our fear or in our ego or in our thoughts of self, if we open to be of service to him, like that is how we hear him. And I feel like what was really important about this is you're asking to be used by him, and it is your asking that will bring the receiving, because this is an ask and receive universe. This is an interactive universe, and like, if we want to hear him and we want to be guided by him and we want to know what to do and how to see, like, if we open to him and ask, it's unfailing. He answers every single time. And sometimes I can hear in like what you're saying, like sometimes it's just a download and you just receive it all. Sometimes it's little bits at a time. Sometimes it might be a voice. Sometimes it might be a feeling. Sometimes it might be a knowing. And so to just be open to the many different ways that he wants to communicate to us is really, really powerful and really important. And I resonate so much. That's how I do it too. That it's just an ask and receive universe, and I do my best to stay out of the way and to let him tell me what to do and where to go. And we begin to develop the trust in that and develop the faith in that over time as we practice it. So it really is just a practice. Yeah.
Yes. In the Course, it's lovely. In the Course, he says, "Where I am made welcome, there I am."
Yes.
So welcome him. And I'm seeing almost the imagery of you talking about at the beginning that you were brought up with just like the Jesus on the cross. Like, that's a symbol to me of like a dead Jesus. Whereas to me, it's like Jesus is alive. Like, he rose from the dead. Like, he demonstrated eternal life. Like, that means he's here now. And when he says things like, "I'm with you until the end of time," like, I mean this in a literal sense. We can trust that. Like, he's literally with us. And if, like you said, give him welcome. He demonstrates that to us in a way that we will understand. Oh, and that's with you saying that he's used everything that kironJ is and is good at and has the skills for. He uses everything about you to extend his will and his love through you. I was just having this conversation this morning with another brother who was actually on this Living with Jesus series. We said the exact same thing. He's like, Jesus is using everything that I have to give. I'm like, I know! It's amazing! Yes.
It's very personalized.
The latest thing I'd like to just lob in here, the using everything.
Yes.
As a young adult, I was a passionate skier.
Ooh.
I loved skiing, but it was all special, very, very, very special in all sorts of ways. And then because of the illness and finances and all sorts of things, I didn't ski for 26 years. And it was very much put on the back burner. And then last year, my family were talking about going abroad, skiing, and would I like to come with them? I thought, oh, wow, I'll just go down. I found out there was a local dry ski slope. You don't have them in the States. There's like a matting, nothing to do with snow, but it's an artificial surface which approximates snow. And I thought, oh, I'll just go along and have a little go. Which I did. That was last May, and it's developed. And as we speak, I'm in the middle of the selection process to train as a ski instructor.
No. Oh, that's so fun.
Amazing. And I'm getting more and more of a sense of why.
Right.
it's brilliant classroom for throwing out the specialness. No, it's not about specialness now at all. So I see the specialness thinking that was there and letting it go. How we skied all those years ago is very different from how you ski now. So there's a lot of unlearning and learning. So that mirrors.
Mark of Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just getting more and more sense of how I might be able to run courses that have what they would call mind drills alongside physical drills.
Yes.
So looking at the emotional side, the mental side of this activity. And Jesus will be right in there, supporting, showing how this outreach can work.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's exactly it. I feel like that's what Jesus has had me do with my Whole and Healthy Kitchen. That it's a very physical act. It's something in the kitchen. You work with food, but he helps me to teach my students and to demonstrate in my daily life with cooking that it's understanding the mind and our relationship to food first, and even that can be used for him. And I think that's really important, especially when it's like, Jesus is all about the mind. We got to heal the mind first. That's the cause. And obviously spirit, is what we are. And that's where it all comes from. But then it's also learning how to bring it into this world, like how to practically apply it in our everyday life and maintain proper perception and maintain that relationship with him and allow ourselves to see it properly and use it according to his will and not our own. And all of these things are so important. And so I'd love to hear that that's kind of happening for you too with your love of skiing. Like, what a blessing. That's it. That's it. It's so great. My goodness.
Yeah.
So this leads into the next question that I have, and I'm curious how you're going to answer this. This is going to be good. But how do you view Jesus's role as teacher of humanity? Like, we've talked about him as our own personal teacher and helping us to teach others. But what do you see as his role as teacher of humanity?
Yeah. I would come back with a different terminology.
Sure.
Because my understanding, my way of seeing is that humanity is part of the illusion. We're not people. We're just not people, and there just isn't a world. So Jesus is not helping us in the illusion, to change the illusion. Jesus, as he says in the Course, is a model for decision. He has shown that the decision for God can be made and that we can make it. That's what the Course says. So that is the way that I would understand Jesus's role. He is this light. He is this transcended mind. He is this presence that we can tune into. And that is calling us, not by anything active. He's not, as we were saying earlier, he's not knocking on the door, but it is helping us remember who we are. By that presence, the mind can be turned in that direction by our volition. He can't do anything. He's not a magician. He's, if he could heal minds, then there would no longer be a world. There would no longer be any suffering. If he could just go zap.
Right. Exactly.
He, because we have all power. We are extensions of God's being. We are the Christ. No one, God, Jesus, Holy Spirit, Buddha, you name it, none of them can actually make us do anything. They can only be that representation of the truth. And then we will turn towards it. In the Course it says we will all turn towards it because it's inevitable. God is inevitable. And of course he has this mighty role to play in that sense, in that he's been through all this shenanigans and come out the other side.
Right.
And I was thinking about this, that the first big wave of opening to the Jesus flavour of the transcended mind, of course, was through Christianity.
Right.
And that, without speaking to anybody specifically or even the whole idea of Christianity, but just giving a sense of it is a dualistic teaching. It's generally thought of as a dualistic teaching. And yes, the rebranding's going on because A Course in Miracles is a non-dual teaching. And I would see it that this is another go at us understanding what Jesus was talking about. Jesus the man, if we talk about it like that in The Illusion, yes, he was giving a pure non-dual message, but to minds that were so immersed in the dualistic understanding. So there was a lot of misunderstanding of his teaching. And now we have an opportunity, not exclusively through A Course in Miracles, but A Course in Miracles is a major way of opening further to what he said and having a better understanding, a clearer understanding. So he can, because Jesus is such a well-known name, isn't it? In the world, people know, they say Jesus, we know the historical figure, and we know Christianity. So there's tremendous potential for people to turn to Jesus and then have a purified understanding if that's what they choose.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. I love how you articulated that, and that's exactly what I'm getting at with this question. And I feel like you're leaning on one of the quotes from the Course that's popping up for me, that he says, like, seek not to change the world, but will to change your mind about the world. And I feel like it's the same thing with our identity, that he is teaching us that this body is not our identity, that this people identity, this name is not what we are. He's teaching us to remember what we are as God created us, and only that. And that's why it's non-dual, because it's whole and complete as God created us. It's not like darkness and the light. It's like, I am the light, and the light will shine away the darkness when I am who and what I am. And I feel like, to me, that is how Jesus is the teacher of humanity, by being our guide, our demonstrator, like the ultimate authority in our mind, to remind us of how it is that we can see ourselves, see the world, see our brothers, see Jesus, see our role. And then he's instructing, then when we join with him, it's just a natural extension of the love of God. And to me, that's how we bring heaven to earth. And like you've been demonstrating this whole time, that he will tell us exactly what our part is. It even says in the Course, your part is essential in God's plan for salvation. And I feel like, but we have to start here first, cultivate the relationship here first, let it drop into our heart to increase that faith so that we can walk with him and not focus outward first, trying to change things out there first. And then oftentimes we'll get caught in the mess that way, because our inner compass is not grounded in the whole non-dual truth of our eternal being. So you definitely expressed it in a way that I deeply, deeply resonate with. And to also remember, just to continue to share on this idea for one more minute, just the idea of remembering that this world is an illusion, but Jesus also says to us, like, you don't need to stay there necessarily, because there's a world beyond this world that we want. And he's teaching us to anchor our mind on the real world, which is where us as God's children, God's souls, exist in heaven for all eternity. And I feel like that is what we're working towards. And that happens through inner experience first, and then extends through us to others to bless the world. So, yeah.
Beautifully, beautifully said. Yes. I work with a lot of people, and one-to-ones, groups, and all kinds of different ways. And a lot of times, especially when people come to me for one-to-ones, and there's some sticky something going on, and there's such a drive to sort out that sticky something.
Right, sure.
I want to see you because I've got this going on. What can I do? And there's, what can I do about this? And a lot of the work is seeing exactly as you have just said, that we need to come back to the mind and see what's going on in the mind, and that is a reflection of what's going on in the mind. Change the mind, and then the reflection will change.
Exactly.
We can't go straight to the reflection.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And that's like key. I feel like, yes. And we can find what we just said in the Bible when we look for it. Right. And that's the thing too. And I think this is back to him getting the upgrade in branding and us to really, really understand what he's teaching, that when we allow ourselves to focus on the healing of our own mind and clearing our own lens, we will naturally hear him. And those who hear his voice see the same thing. They hear the same truth. They join in the same purpose. And that's the mark of God, our united reality, right? The oneness for which we have actually never lived. So this is also why I love these, because we get to join together in this. It's like, seemingly you and I in form have never met before, but you're now my best friend. I love you. Like, hello. Like, this is so beautiful. This is ultimate joining, ultimate true relationship here. So beautiful.
Yeah.
So with that. Kind of with that being said, that does lead into my final question here, but because there are obviously lots of people who are unsure about Jesus, unsure if they can trust him, unsure if they can trust communication with him. So maybe could you talk to us about that a little bit, and what you would maybe suggest to someone who is really trying to open up to the relationship with Jesus, trying to open up to trusting communication with him, and maybe share some wisdom for those brothers and sisters?
I think the first thing I'd say is this traveling back to the mind again, that doubts about Jesus. Is Jesus real? Mm-hmm. Can I trust him? Are reflections of doubts about the person's reality. What is my reality? What can I trust? And that's being projected onto Jesus. Right. Is Jesus real? Can I trust Jesus? So I would make that connection. I would offer that as a contemplation piece, that maybe if the work is done in the mind, it'll all become quite clear about Jesus. He's our brother. And we only really have one relationship with the one mind. So I would suggest doing any and all forgiveness work in their situation, again, wherever they are. Can they be less judgmental? Can they be less critical? Can they desire to see the light in others, whoever they are, their bosses, their children, their partners? Work on that. Desire to work on that because they want to find the truth of themselves, because they want to find peace. And Jesus says, there he is in the holy instant. I stand within the holy instant, as clear as you would have me be in the Course. So if this person who was doubting and unsure could take a general approach of coming to the light, coming to spirit, in whichever way they saw that, whichever way was most comfortable for them, finding peaceful relating wherever they could, then notice whether the desire to know Jesus is still there. Is it becoming uppermost? Is it a desire to know Buddha? Has it suddenly changed? Because it doesn't really matter. But if their way, if their healing is to be in relationship with a presence that they would identify as Jesus, it will happen through their intention to heal. And just trust. Yes, they can call out to Jesus, but there's a block if it's still an idea of, I'm a person, I'm in trouble, and I want this magician to come and sort it out. That is absolutely blocking the presence of Jesus as A Course in Miracles would know it, the voice of the Course. So it's doing all these other more general things that will prepare the way for a natural opening to Jesus. And then I would say, when someone's ready to open to this presence, they'll know it.
Yeah.
They'll absolutely know it, and they won't doubt it. And everything can go from there. If their desire is to join minds with Jesus, then it will happen.
Oh, thank you so much for saying all of that. I feel like the part that needs to be highlighted here, and you've said it a few times, and it's really important. Jesus is not a magician, and we have free will. So we have the freedom to choose to listen to our own thoughts, our own blocks, our own fears, our own doubts, or we have the choice to learn to listen to him, to learn to listen to the one mind. And it's that choice that we must make. That's where our power of responsibility is. Like Jesus even says in the Course, like the key to salvation, or the key to being saved, to being healed, to being at peace, is I've done this unto myself. And that to the ego, in the hands of the ego, will be seen as blame, and it'll want to inspire guilt. But in the hands of Jesus, he's saying that responsibility is your power, that if you are responsible to choose what voice you listen to, and you're responsible to choose to be at peace instead of pain, that's where your freedom is. Because when we then ask him, and we're willing to be like, okay, I'm responsible, teach me, show me another way, that's the opening for him to come in. But if we have blocks that are saying he's never going to talk to me, he's not going to speak to me, why is he going to come here? We won't be able to hear him, even if he's there saying, I love you, I'm here, I swear, I'm here. We won't notice, we won't recognize. So it is first back to working out some of the kinks and the blocks in our own psyche, to opening to love's presence. And to me, Jesus began as love's presence. So like you said, it doesn't even have to be Jesus per se. But if that's part of your path, it will just happen naturally.
Amen. Yes. Fabulous. I love hearing it all pour out of you. It's fantastic.
I agree with you. This has been so beautiful. I'm so appreciative of this conversation. Oh my goodness. Is there any final thoughts or anything final coming up that is to be shared today?
One thing's coming, to hopefully support anyone who's going through a difficult time. In the early days, when it was very, very difficult, sometimes the best I could do would be to hold my hand like that, like I'm holding Jesus' hand, but physically do it for my benefit, to help me feel something. And say, I stick like glue to you. and it's like a childlike rhyme. And there was something very soothing. I didn't have to think about the course lesson, or not that I wasn't, but when it was extremist and I was just all discombobulated. I stick like glue to you. I stick like glue to you. And that carried me through so many storms. And that's just popped in my mind to offer. Yeah.
So as soon as you said that, I thought of my daughter. So you really are like tapping into like the childlike energy, and even Jesus says, you become like little children to reach the kingdom of heaven. Because as children, they know they don't know, so they're willing to ask the questions. And so I love that. I stick to you like glue. I don't know what else to say. I don't know what else to ask, but I stick to you like glue, and that's enough. That is enough. Everything else will happen from that.
Exactly. It just centers us. It doesn't have to be that. It's just an example. It's not coarse words. And I'm not saying go somewhere else other than the course. It's just, we will be shown, if we come under the course umbrella, we will be shown what we need at each time. And to trust that. Trust it. This is the most magnificent teaching. And anybody who feels an inkling of a willingness or a desire to open to it, to study it, to follow it, go for it. Yes. It's my last word. Go for it.
Go for it. Amen. With that, I'll have links to the books below for anybody who's interested. Because it's something that calls us, and we know when we're ready. And so I do believe this will speak to the hearts and minds of those who are already either firmly grounded in this or willing to learn. So this is beautiful. Well, I think that feels complete. But thank you, anyone who's watching this, and for joining with us today. And I'll
Big thank you.
big thank you too. And I'll just say like and subscribe, just because it shares this wisdom and these gifts with any more people who would find benefit and blessing through these words and through this presence that shares with us today. And kironJ, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you for listening to the guidance for this. Thank you for all the work. I've listened to a few bits and pieces of previous interviews, and it's wonderful, so inspiring. And if you want to know Jesus, listen to your interviews.
Thank you. Yes.
You'll get to hear all sorts of ways that Jesus comes to people.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you for saying that. Oh, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, indeed.
I love you. Peace be with you.
Yeah.